Well, looking ahead now in this part to the next year, with the end of term then coming up and all that sort of thing, have you got any particular other plans? You talked about a few things there, but any particular things you keen on as well?
I'm very keen, as you know, I brought the original motion on climate change emergency, so I'm very keen to see what the public response was to the recent consultation and to see legislation come forward. I'm a little bit wary because I think there are things that we could be and should be doing in terms of benefiting people with climate change. I'm also just aware that you know, the property market seems to be hotting up at the moment. Housing, affordable housing for people, I think that's going to be a big issue.
How can you play that both sides? It's so tricky because people like the idea if they got a house that it's going up in value, but of course if you can't get on the house.
If you can't get on the housing level, and if the cost of property is going massively out of sync with the median incomes, then there's an issue there.
Okay, so government-wise, you've been a little bit dabbling in there. Sometimes you haven't been. Children's champion, for instance, but that didn't stay for too long.
Well, I
moved out.
I prefer to fight for the rights and benefits of all children, not just a narrow few. And the impact has been education. Now we have an education bill coming. I've given a submission on it. I am delighted that there is a committee of 5 members of the House of Keys looking into that particular piece of legislation, because concerns I had over some of the measures in it about criminalising parents and teachers being able to be fined, to go to jail, also taking away the rights of an individual to go to an out of catchment school, and that becomes a legally enforceable power of the department. I think that the Beeman's review that has now been commissioned, and hopefully we'll get to see the report very soon and to be able to discuss that, and the committee looking into the new legislation that's going to shape the future of our education system going forward. I think it's absolutely fundamental to the Isle of Man's well-being that we look at education and ensure that the system and the structure of education is right for our students and to support teachers, and how we want the authority to be divided between what is a state function of a government department and what autonomy should be vested in the individual schools.
Having young children, does that give you more emphasis on this?
Well, I suppose I should declare an interest.
Well,
my children are in the state sector.
But you see it in action, that's my point.
We want the best. I think at an individual level, the schools are brilliant. There are very dedicated teachers, teaching professionals, everyone in education in a school community absolutely wants the best for all of those. But they've had a huge test this year with COVID and having to switch on to an online learning. And in the future, for the coming months, we are going to have to see some children, or if COVID becomes more of a threat or an infection rate increases, how we balance and how we support the schools to provide options of online learning and homeworking and in-school experience as well.
What do you feel about the border situation, for instance, with the government stance?
I think they've done well for the position they've had to now. I appreciate absolutely why they didn't want to go to level 3, especially when the UK's had 2 days of nearly 3,000 new infections confirmed both days. But I am aware of, while a lot of people are very supportive of the stance the government's taken, that it becomes an increasingly hard thing to balance, that people cannot see family members. And while there's an understandable reluctance for some people to go from here to go away and then self-isolate, there are many families who've been in contact with me that would like that ability to sponsor close family and friends to visit,
so a little bit more
self-isolate.
A little bit of relaxation then on this.
Yes, but I can't see the Isle of Man going, or the Isle of Man community wanting completely open borders for the next few months at the very least.
Well, as you keep saying to everyone, isn't it? You get one postbag, keep them shut, one get them open, isn't it?
No, most people are supportive of the government stance. The feedback I've had from going to the 7-day plus test, optional test, and it's not really out of quarantine. You've got a sort of you're able to go to work if it's not public facing and do essential shopping, but otherwise not go to public spaces.
Were you surprised that they didn't go further?
No, I think that gives a workable option for people who need to return to office work. It doesn't help anyone who's going through medical treatment or school young children for getting back into some sort of school community. So there's this pandemic has caused huge amount of hardship immediately, and the bigger question now will be the waiting list for other medical treatments, and I think that's going to be really telling in the coming months, along with the economic recovery. So those have to be the focuses.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, but I'm very much now aware that you can't give me an answer. No one can give me an answer, because if you answer yes, you're immediately under starter's orders. But do you see yourself envisaging standing again as an MHK without declaring here and there?
I find this job a huge privilege to do. It's a great thing when you feel that you have helped people and improved the law, and particularly we have in the past year in domestic abuse, the sex offences bill and obscene publications, all that sort of legislation that's going through, and more to come. I think that there's this administration covering from climate change and the healthcare bill to govern the hospital in a sort of care trust. They're all key things that this administration's done. But in terms of me standing, if I felt I could still contribute at this moment in time, I don't see why I would not be standing. But who could say a week's a long time in politics?
I think I've got the better question is, if you were going to stand, when would you declare then?
I think the time for that is in the summer next year. I mean, even July, when Parliament's dissolved. I mean, at the moment, it would be my intention to stand, is all I can say.
Without actually officially declaring, yes. That's tricky, isn't it? Because if you do come out, you're immediately under
I think only really when the election's called that the rules would kick in.
I was kind of warned, be careful with that question by people who seem to know more about it. Anyway. How's the government been doing here? I mean, should we go for a vote? We're a bit early, but we might have a bit more to say than this yet. So out of 10, how do you think?
Well, the COVID response, after a couple of sticky issues, the COVID response has been very good. I do think they've taken the eye off the ball, and it's going to take a long time to get back in terms of healthcare. Education review, if they can act swiftly and listen to the independent review they've had and implement it, if they can get on. I mean, there are things like the flood strategy. Before we had the Arup report, there was a flood strategy. Nothing happened for so long. Now I'm pleased there is a working group. There's a project officer being appointed that I've been asked to meet at the end of the month. So I'm pleased that things are moving, but it is excruciatingly slowly. Government overall, probably an 8.5.
It's quite high for you, I think.
Yeah.
You're not. I mean, you haven't been a big fan, shall we say, of the Quayle administration in the past, because we've got pictures of you.
I think
is it a personality thing, though?
Not at all. No, I think that there was a challenge. I think this government, particularly the health minister, chief minister, and others. I mean, enterprise, treasury, education. They've all been working towards a single goal, which is for the best outcome for the Isle of Man community. And I think that is reflected in the public confidence in. Personally, in this administration, I think we have to give credit where it's due. Fine. I think they've done well on that, but I think they may have dropped the ball on a few other things. I mean, plastic strategy, not really progressed. The biodiversity, not done. I mean, the 5-year audit is ridiculous. No action plan, no 2-year action plan. There are things that have dropped by the wayside. I think that they're incredibly hard-working people, but I think sometimes we lose focus because they're just trying to achieve too much.
Would you want to be a minister? I mean, it's maybe a bit late in this administration. But
it is. I don't think I'd be a minister in this administration, no. Would I see myself, if I were lucky enough to be re-elected, being a minister? It would depend on the ministry and if I thought that I was the best person for the job. I see a lot of talented people coming up through the backbenches at the moment. I think there's a very
like education, by the sounds of it.
I don't know that I would necessarily be the best person to head a department. I have an interest in there, as a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I have an interest in climate change. I have an interest in social affairs, healthcare, because they're all fundamental things that impact us. I think also, just in terms of roads and road structures, these are things that matter to people, and renewable energy particularly, that's what I want to see. So that comes under Manx Utilities. But I often think that with a journalistic background and knowledge of civil service, I sometimes think that I'd rather go on the scrutiny side and hold government to account.
MLC?
Not at all, no. I'd rather have a term. But I'd also think that the Auditor General, the fact that there are amateurs on a £1 billion budget, I think Mr Speaker raised it and consistently has. Yeah. We've been to Jersey. We are one of the very few jurisdictions. Why does government resist having a professional auditor that actually saves £8 to £10 for every £1 it costs to have that audit?
That question's been asked many times, as far as I know.
I think that will come back.
Okay, just to finish off with, your score out of 10.
For me personally...
How have you done?
I couldn't have given it more. I have to say I've been flat out for the whole part of COVID. I mean, there was one point where I think I had half a weekend day that I didn't look at my emails, and they've been pretty constant even through the summer recess, and there are a couple of issues coming up that I think are urgent questions that need answering. But I suppose in terms of balancing how busy I am with what you actually achieve, I'd say an 8.
Fine. I can't remember. Do you remember what you voted last year on that?
I think I've been always
You've been
7.
consistent, yeah.
But I think I'd give myself an 8. I would like to think it would be higher next time, and I've given government slightly higher, which is, but I think that reflects what people who've risen to meet the challenges that we've all faced.